Yes. Thank you.
Okay, welcome everybody. Today is May 11th. This is the Westchester Borough Planning Commission's voting session. Today we have Alan Burke, Quincy Burrow, Steve Mitten, Sheila Vaccaro, Matt Clapp, and I'm Jim Cherry. Thomas Doherty will be joining us late. Aaron Fluke is not here today. He's back. He's bothered. So any announcements from anybody on the planning commission? We're missing our zoning hearing board and our HARB representative. So, any citizen comments from items not on the agenda? Thank you. All right, so reports, we'll just skip right through those, Matt, and then old business. Can't really say, Alan, that we've moved on the 97A 1919, following up on that. It was amazing. It's a slow moving process. That is quick. I mean, the good part is we did get the updated planning commission procedures on the website, but in the wrong spot, but get 50% credit. So, okay, and then okay, a couple just big picture pieces here. The applicant for 410 South High Street is not going to be in attendance today, but I do still think it would be worth having a little bit of discussion to see if because they met with the tree commission chips here, and maybe we can have a little bit of a conversation amongst ourselves. So where everything is, we just received the county's review letter today, and updated. I believe Tom Commit had updated his review letter as well. So we're still waiting on a couple pieces from the applicant as well. They did. No, they did not. You'll be the first. I'll be distributing it as quickly as possible. So let's see. Go back to the.
Well, we do hope to have all work session.
Yes, what I asked for was turning arrays, a template on the site plan,
Right.
height, the worksheet on height. So that should have been initial with or without renderings, as well as architectural renderings showing that they're complying with requirements of the residential development district. So kind of a similar request from the county because they reviewed it, saw the requirements to fit in there. So I appreciate the fact that they fairly consistent with what we're looking for there.
So just a question. So I noticed it was labeled, let's just say borough. And I mean, in the past we've had letters from building and housing office. This is their review plan. It's the address. Are we anticipating that will come, or is the county letter serving that?
My understanding is the county letter is all we're receiving from the county. I believe that Kelly, we should be getting a traffic. Typically, Pinoni would have issued one for engineering, which I do not believe we've seen. Tom Commit at TCA did submit a review letter as well as a revised review letter. I was expecting that the applicant.
No, he did review, sorry.
They did review the text like this. So I would expect that by next month, the applicant should have had an opportunity to respond to those review letters. So each one should have a corresponding response letter.
So I'm really pleased to cover on this. My question is, historically, the head of the building office for major projects would issue an opinion, the issues that he felt were things that need to be addressed. Wondering, are we anticipating something?
I can ask.
Okay, all right,
See if he's going to.
all right.
I think it's a fair ask. I would have expected that he would have picked up those couple of items prior to saying this was a complete submittal.
I just wonder whether we anticipate, that's all. Sure.
Can I ask about the bus stop comment on the county letter?
Sure.
What are we allowed to like require there? What is required there? What? I don't know. But-
Well, required is a tough word.
Okay.
I think, when I'm saying that relative to it,
Right,
when we're reviewing for compliance. And
Right.
If we have an objection, we should be able to cite a specific ordinance, whether it's in zoning or Saldo. There are pieces that we certainly can request or ask or have the applicant consider. When we get into the bus stop, we get into multiple people, SEPTA, the county, PennDOT, the borough. So, but certainly the idea of, addressing that is fair enough for a conversation.
so I know that in front of the coffee shop that's sort of just down a bit, the council worked really hard and fought over putting
Children.
a bus stop enclosure. It's a word. No, it's like a really simple word that I'm just
Shelter.
bus stop, shelter thing. There's a better word for it. Sorry. We all know what, like a little glass box. There's a word. Okay, on the other side of the street, so it would, I think it would make sense if we had that also on this side of the street. Although it was very tenuous putting it in because of the size of the sidewalk and the other things that were mentioned at that corner. It became very tricky how to fit that in. So I think in this new construction, it would be,
You're talking about this.
well, no, it's down. So this is where I'm talking about what we're doing here, but comparing it to, it's almost a block down, on the south, on the. Keep going.
Coffee shop, is it Linden? Yeah.
Oh, 2 blocks down. There, right, you passed it. That corner, Saxby's corner. So they're fitting a bus stop. Yeah. And it was difficult and very awkward conversation. And, the last time I was at the meetings, it was happening. Is it?
Okay.
I think moving forward, especially on High Street, Market Street, Gay Street, it would be really nice if we could, at minimum, make sure that there's enough space to put a bus stop enclosure, which again has a better word. But also, do everything we can to get them there, which they do cost money, and they are, of course, coordination between a bunch of people. So I don't know what is on our books that we can pressure people with at this point in this.
I think that's We can add that to our list.
Add that to the list.
Add that to our list of
Sorry.
items to chase down, because I think it's a fair, there's enough individuals standing there. If you go up to where the Rite Aid was, there's always a couple benches sitting there, and I always feel like, boy, if they could just add a canopy or something on the
Right.
building or anything to help improve.
Right,
the,
and we're adding a bunch of houses, like, going to be adding more and more, we need to accommodate. Also, we need to sort of advertise that we have public transit, like, people think that we don't. Like, complain all the time how there is no, I'm like, it's here, it exists, and.
Fair enough.
Mhm.
Okay, well, why don't we, I guess Thomas is not here for the preservation, but I think we can jump back to him. We have side yards. Matt?
I don't have anything new.
Right, but
I guess I could move to implement the changes to the side yard definitions as presented in the slides that I presented at the working meeting. For NC2, NC3, and the commercial services districts.
Right.
That's what I would propose.
I would second that.
Okay.
All right. Does anybody have any comments about that? Quincy, did you have an opportunity to review that video? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any comments from residents? Alan?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, well, I think that was just, anytime we have an opportunity to provide clarification in this.
Mhm.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, pedestrian safety, clear site triangles. You know, as soon as you said bus stop, I was thinking about the visibility around those, and what can happen, because it looked like that one may be right up against the curb, and it might be better if it was inbound of the sidewalk or some type of
Yeah.
location that would improve.
which I think is why we should do something to make that more standardized on the main streets.
Sure. And I wonder who would typically pay for that kind of stuff? Is that the municipality,
It was,
the transportation authority, the SEPTA?
yeah, it was a combination effort, and the county and SEPTA, and we all, everybody was coming together, and in the end, I don't know what the resolution final was, but it was a lot of people suggesting that we do it, so.
SEPTA.
Yeah, SEPTA is
Okay.
instrumental, but the county was involved, so
Okay.
definitely.
Is that, do we know if that's in either landscapes or pros or any of the or in our comprehensive plan? Do we know that it exists as a starting point somewhere? I'm just trying to.
I don't, that's what I'm trying to figure out too. Sorry, I'm leaning on you.
Well, I like the idea, and it would be, in my head, there's a lot of facets to it. I mean, everything from the design of them to the locations of them to the quantities of where they would happen and prioritizing them. So
Right,
it's multiple pieces there. I do think when I see people standing out there, I would just pull over and let them sit in my car until the rain
Yeah,
stops. But
yeah.
if we can, we'll give them a ride, one or the other. But if we can keep that conversation on there, I think that's good. I'm not sure how much an individual applicant can do for it.
right, and like, I have to figure out for myself, but I want to figure out how we slide this in here. One thing, I know it was really hard in front of Saxby's, to, fit that in there in a reasonable way. So one thing is just making sure that the sidewalk is large enough to accommodate with telephone poles and bump outs and all of the things that
Sure.
are already there or need to be there.
Sure. Now, I don't know if Thomas had continued on providing that the one intersection that we're looking at, if he had continued designing something specific for that.
Yes.
So we'll find out when he.
Yes, but I mean, we talked everything that I have to add, and now we're just gonna wait on that drawing, and that's fine.
I'm gonna put TD.
Mhm.
All right, Whitney.
There's a word. But it's like that.
You have any
the right.
She lives, so I put together.
The 104 stop, is it southbound or northbound?
I don't know, it's just that they mentioned it in that letter, so,
I
so.
do want to say that.
I think it's south.
I didn't get any responses and, at least now, I don't think there's anything in my power to continue with this. I'm gonna reach to Ryan Travis, he's, I think it's worth too. So I'm gonna talk with him, see if any implementable actions we can do to kind of pursue this requirement. This is not it. Scroll down to the west side. You go right down here. You go down to the Houston Drive. Houston. There we go. Go to the top, this is slideshow. To the right, to the right. Put it in. Okay, yeah, so this is kind of just me reiterating what I've said, but I included some designs that I attempted to put together. But yeah, so this is a little bit of a refresher. For 2 months ago. We know it's currently auto-oriented, and we want to expand the mixed-use presence of the borough, and with that also improve the streetscape. And I know Aaron noted last month was a floodplain that runs through there that I did not pick up last time, so I included a more depth analysis of that. And we know we would provide for more pedestrian friendly, expand that historic downtown character of the borough. And we know that PennDOT controls Market Street and East Bay Street, so that's gonna be a hurdle if we wanna really get anything to the streets we've done there. So, yeah. Next slide. Okay, so these are some physical improvements that we could make. I included some pictures just because to get an idea of what, I know that the downtown area of the borough already has that character that we want to see, but yeah, I'd bump out some parking between, so, and that provides for amenity and green space, like the open air market, and it calms traffic. Then I have tree trees, planters, and I know we touched on public art, so that could be an option. And I know Aaron mentioned they're changing permits for planters, which I don't know if that's still in the works or not, but yeah. And then also, street furniture that enhances, that makes the sidewalk more beautiful and allows people to sit down and relax. And then we know we want to reduce curb cuts, and we want to infill parking lots. So I don't think we have any vacant lots, but there's vacant lots, but they're not their own. So we would have to, I don't really know the full process of that, but if we want to put some sort of development there, it would have to be a change of ownership or something. And yeah. Okay, so this is more of an analysis of what PennDOT has control over versus the borough. So PennDOT really controls anything that touches, alters, or affects the state roads. That includes State Street and Market Street, East State Street, Market Street. And like I said, it includes sidewalks, curbs, drainage, lighting, etc. And then all these elements also really require in the highway occupancy permit, which is a more like in-depth permit that you have to go through PennDOT to get approved and everything. And that, all those things listed is what, if you wanted to change or alter any of those things, that's what we would include in there. And then as for the borough, it includes all streetscape elements on local property or outside PennDOT's right. So this includes, zoning, aesthetics, and maintenance, and any elements that require local or municipal permits. Like the planters currently, with art, I'm pretty sure does furniture, landscaping, and whatnot. But pretty much the borough permits don't override PennDOT, and you often need both, regardless of its
on Market or East State Street. In the borough, and it's on PennDOT road, so, that's something that we'd have to go through if we wanted to pursue this project. And overlap between street trees, planters, street furniture, public art, etc. But yeah,
When you say overlap,
that includes, you need both PennDOT approval and borough approval. So that's
for street trees,
first street for any of those things, yeah.
because I was thinking that the street trees were opening up some wells and getting more of a rhythm of tree lines inside
Yeah.
the curb. Burrows, how it works.
And if
It's the bump outs.
Yeah,
Well, the bump outs is where PennDOT's gonna have a bigger say,
yeah.
and that's probably more money.
So we planted a bunch of street trees in the bump outs on South High Street. That one thing the borough owns, it's not a PennDOT.
And which location, can you name
We
it?
planted, so on South High, there are probably seven
can
or
come
eight
up.
bump outs.
Should we come up and sit, so you can.
Yeah, so we can hear you on that, thanks.
As part of the PennDOT project, they added a bunch of bump outs. And we just planted a bunch of street trees in those bump outs, and we didn't need PennDOT's permission to do that.
That's,
We were told by Don Anderson that we could do that.
so no PennDOT.
Right.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
And you don't need PennDOT's approval for street trees anywhere because that's borough, that's part of the right of way, it's borough.
I thought if it was a PennDOT state road, it's altering this. Technically, you're altering the road side.
But I think the sidewalk is the borough's.
Yeah, I think my understanding was that as well, but I'm completely open that I would buy that too.
We created 11 new tree wells just recently,
Mhm.
most of them on South High Street.
Mhm. I saw them in front of the Verizon.
Yeah, there are
the
4 in
Verizon
there.
building. Okay, well, how about, have you looked at the East Carter?
Not in an organized way,
Okay,
but we do plan to create a lot more tree wells in the business district as we can afford it.
okay.
They're $260 a piece to create, plus the tree, so.
Okay.
I mean, if there's some way we should coordinate, we'd love to do that.
Well, I
We're sort
think,
of doing it wherever we have money to do it.
well, that stretch of road, when you're approaching and entering into the borough, it can be improved, you know?
Yeah, I think we probably planted maybe 25 street trees along South High Street in the last year, but they still need a lot more.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I assume that if you had a bump out, and that's the bump out's it's gonna be on the shoulder if you had a bump out.
The bump outs that they added are all right at the corner of the intersection.
I'm saying that potentially if you had
Oh, well,
on Market and the Gate, it would, the shoulder being unused, I was.
Okay, I'd have to.
Yeah, when you read this sort of reads that landscape.
Yeah.
Bump outs and changing the curb cuts and all that would be PennDOT.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about, you didn't create curbs, you just filled.
they were bump outs that PennDOT did, or the contractor did, and there's soil in there, so we just planted a tree.
Right.
Yeah, so you already had the PennDOT, then you add the borough.
Added the tree,
Got it.
only because there was soil in there, so we could dig a hole.
Yeah.
That sounded like the expensive part.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that project, it was coordinated with PennDOT and there was lengthy coordination to make it happen. And I don't know if there was discussion of specifically what was being planted in those bump outs, but that was part of a very collaborative effort between the borough and PennDOT.
Yeah, unfortunately, they didn't talk to PennDOT about planting trees. It should have been funded by PennDOT if we could have done that.
Well, PennDOT didn't pay for a lot.
Oh, they didn't, okay.
Yeah, so they didn't pay for, yeah, they paid for basic construction and that was it. And then anything at all attractive was borough money. And, it was a big back and forth to get that right?
I do have some pictures. Yeah, I think the next one is. But here's the floodplain, a little bit of that. As we know, the development is restricted there, and much of the corridor predates FEMA floodplain rules, so it's pretty much like a non-conforming use with zoning, but it's with floodplain instead. So they're all allowed to be there regardless of the current floodplain FEMA rules. And a large portion of the development was for FEMA's 1% floodplain maps. And that's 127 stormwater plans, and other for stormwater ordinances. And if we want to see new development, it must meet the modern floodplain rules. And if land is low, first floor must be elevated. Developers can't reuse the footprint. You got some sort of stormwater management system, flood resistant materials, and this is more my opinion, but first floor should all be retail or parking. And because of floodplain, residential on the first floor would have to be raised, which is at that point would be second floor. And it would be nearly impossible. And I think we already are pursuing that idea of having retail on the bottom / parking and residential above. So then that perfectly fits with our kind of vision, and plus PennDOT review if it's in the right way. So it's hurdle and hurdle, but yeah, so we're developing for us when the floodplain is very financially attractive and unless incentivized, which I brought up a couple months ago. And how do we incentivize developers who want to build in the East Corridor and extend that historic downtown character of the borough? So, yeah. I think next slide. Yes, here we go. So this is what I envision. I know I'm not an artist or designer, but so this is what we have right now in the history. I took some pictures from Google Maps and I just put in some lines and some drawings and some trees and lighting. I know this isn't the fullest potential, but this is the start. Start off, reduce curb cuts, so it's pointed at that one street, and I drove down there today, and it's literally I know it a lot, but I drove down there today, and I was looking at it because I had this meeting tonight, and I realized that it's like literally every 10 feet is a curb cut. And then that next part kind of gets into the street trees with the bump outs included. So that's what I did. Is this somewhat possible? Or you think, I mean, I'm kind of asking you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but with the planners added out as well in the bump outs. And then also we add pedestrian scale lighting, roof crosswalks, we can't even see. It's kind of ties into pedestrian safety as well as we can't even see the crosswalk except the two lines. But yeah, so any comments on
Well, I think it would be fair to get a plan along that whole a couple blocks of that street and actually lay something out into it. I think as a starting point at the intersections to shorten up or have the bump outs at the intersections so that it helps the pedestrians and it kind of keeps those corners and those sight lines.
So you mean the bottom right, to the right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Just to narrow that up. So putting the street or this car on a diet, like to reduce the amount of expansive concrete that's going across there. From the back of that sidewalk to the back of that sidewalk, we're looking at the sidewalk, 1, 2, 3, 4 lanes worth of the sidewalk. It can be greatly reduced because we're not necessarily driving. The curb cuts are, it's just something that maybe over time can be reduced.
Right. Yeah.
But I think we could start with a site plan and then at least have something a little more concrete as a starting point that can maybe be presented to PennDOT or the boroughs and just use it as a starting point is to build on that depending on whose comments. Street trees, that type of stuff, what type of bids, where they are, and then have a little more concrete starting point for people to discuss. Somebody can put $1 to it, but some of the stuff can be done. I think inside the curb, or when I say outside of the street, could be done by the borough. So at least they could be put on the list of where street trees might be able to happen.
Right.
I think when you get into those, at those intersections and anything that falls into the PennDOT, that's where it can.
Yeah,
But I think like,
I think it would all provide parking in between the bump outs.
Mhm.
sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that
I
always
always
helps.
ask questions too.
Can I add
Yeah.
something? The downtown, the more pleasant downtown area has, the design parameters of the brick sidewalks and the granite curbs and the streetlights. And I love the street tree, I love the bump out, but like, should we just be continuing those things, those elements, just to, because that's just a sort of uniform backdrop that that's what we were going back and forth, PennDOT so hard on, was really focusing on the granite and the streetlight and the
Brick.
brick.
Can I ask a question? Is it 35 out here?
I think
35
it,
miles per hour? Or is it 25?
I think it's 35 right there,
Does it hit 25 and for the next block?
maybe. Is it? Oh, where is it?
I don't see one.
No, I think it was starting to the max. Yeah.
And the second thing, this Knox property over here, is there idea, plan, is there something?
There had been discussion. I
There's
don't remember if it's
something.
sitting
There's something.
Well, yeah, it's all this.
Yeah.
So, I think when that happens, if and when whatever development happens there, I think that's where the opportunity to get what we want.
Yeah.
That's, that's why, have an idea going into it, saying, sure.
There,
It's 35.
what I saw for that involved a lot of discussion about sidewalk gardens. I didn't know that was a thing before
rain
that
garden,
presentation.
Mhm.
Not a rain garden, sidewalk garden.
But was this gonna be? Like an old 410 South High Street?
It was yes,
Big apartment.
I think that's a HO70. It was,
It's,
it was a large building.
60 or 70?
Yeah.
Yeah, that what was proposed was taking advantage of the height overlay.
And there's your, I'm sure it'd be all parking.
It was all parking underneath. It had to be. And the whole drainage system had to be all redone. Like it was a lot of had to be things.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I know just like Rubenstein's property, which is that being in that floodplain, that's why they elevated it up onto a podium. So that lower level is primarily unoccupied, it's just parking, but you'll have access to lobbies and stairs.
So, maybe that's a point. If that was. Passage. What would you want the street around to be? That, and for that kind of, whatever kind of development. I mean, there.
And there's in old presentations, there's a bunch of sidewalk design and about plants and gardens and how that would all, and it was not street trees per se. I don't know if it was really talking about things like brick sidewalks, which,
Wow, that's good. With materials, right, I didn't really think of that, spanning that,
yeah,
that's kind of the actual.
you're right,
Well, while it's on paper and it's free, I
Right.
mean, I would think we aim high, even if we get.
right. We want granite, everything.
South High Street, is that brick too?
There's a mix down there. There's some concrete.
So
What's its bird?
we,
end of the town center district.
Yeah.
Working.
it was all brick down to, but the granite curbs, I think were extended and the street lights were, they were something and then we changed them to the borough things, I think. It's a lot back and forth.
I mean, we've talked before, if we could just take a look at almost every block and just almost identify and put all the pieces, benches, trees, lights, brick, granite, and kind of make each street or each block the ideal block from a pedestrian standpoint and a borough standpoint. And just kind of, like you said, continue that more historic town center outwards. So I think it's worth laying something out on the actual street if we're looking at that as Gay Street or Market Street. And really, it's just from the borough, within borough.
And the only curb cut that I can think of is 7-Eleven, that,
On high.
that is in sort of the current aesthetic that could maybe be applied down here. It's there. It's there.
Across the street.
Okay, yeah.
There's a few.
There's a couple, but
Yeah, but borough halls right here, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why we would want to improve this. It's really a first impression, it's really a.
It's a gateway to borough.
mhm.
Yeah, Market Street, so. I guess a little bit similar, but I feel like Market Street's more developed. And we have root lines. But it's just a big open space that are unappealing. Yeah. How much more to say?
But treating it in a similar way,
So, yeah,
narrowing up that drive area, the cartway, bringing those bump outs in, at least at the corners with some trees and again, allowing parking in along those sides would all help improve the scale.
it's like top right.
The bump outs that we put in are all in neighborhoods and
Yeah.
we PennDOT went into High Street, but I think there's a big opportunity for pedestrian safety. And I think we can get PennDOT on our side in some of this. They won't pay for everything, but they'll pay for portions of it. If we really talk about the pedestrian safety and get Kelly to prove it, some heavy pressure stuff. But I think it's that they came up with the High Street plan. It wasn't, I'm pretty sure they started that conversation. So if we can sort of suggest maybe we look at these areas and talk, there's a high school over there, like get some pedestrian safety for the people who live in, right? Like,
But you could almost look at that South High Street and do a very similar.
Yeah, I think that's what we had. So I know I covered this last time, but so we know drive-throughs are disallowed, like no care. Yeah. So I guess the first thing is allowing street parking between bump outs. The first thing is bump outs. And we know this increases pedestrian safety. Common traffic can almost act as a buffer zone. And it uses that making short space, which is just allowing people to drive faster and speed through that little area. And I know that Aaron mentioned that's in the works for the planners, and then some broader actions, which I covered last time, that I want to reiterate, is the density bonus. And I know this provides developers with like more flexibility in terms of like public benefits, is the way I see it. And maybe they get extra open space, or like they get like it's there's multiple things that get tied into this. And it kind of depends on the borough's ideas and all ours, but also incentivizable actions, speed reductions and waivers for unified mixed-use developments. Which I don't know if that's actually like doable, but it was an idea. And then faster approvals is an option. And even flexible parking requirements. So like maybe less parking, under parking. Yeah, density bonus is really only work when market demand exists, and this corridor is not that. And then a little bit more into it, with the mixed use development, unified mixed use development. Which is tied to the incentive idea, and this is me just kind of reiterating everything, but combining with the rear under parking, reduce mid parking minimums and a bonus for zero front curb cuts. On-street curb parking can calm traffic and act as a buffer for pedestrians, above that street trees, planters, like I said. And the main thing I think is communication with PennDOT, if we're gonna affect the road at all. And redevelopment and incentives, like I covered, if we find, there you go. Oh, you go back, then we find current parcels with existing front parking, which is grandfather and target them for residential redevelopment and incentives. Maybe facade or infill programs or something to incentivize developers that want to come here and want to build in this area and create demand within this area. Yeah. It's the last slide. So this is looking ahead, and if we wanted to have some sort of actionable project or implementable project for this, I thought there would be some sort of, we would need some sort of action plan, feasibility study. And with funding, I know DPP is currently off this year, but when we have all these funding sources, and there's even more. And I know this leads to the West Scotia Township borders right on the east side, and so collaboration with the West Scotian, and even downtown bid is essential, with their new 5-year extension on the borough downtown, so, and I know the comp plan states these things a gazillion times, so this is one of the comp plan's goals, and comp plan runs 10 years, and I know it's sort of an ongoing goal, but we've next comp plans this year, so gotta add it back. Yeah, that's all I have.
Really nice job.
Thank
Well done. And I think next is we just lay out the street, just like how PennDOT did South High Street. And even if it's a block at a time, or, grab those intersections to make sure they're on there. And then just kind of almost lay out an aerial view, like you're looking at from the site, from there. And then just basically almost lay out exactly what you want to see.
Yeah.
How you want to see it.
Cool.
And just lay that in there. We can just at least start that as a start. And then it gives you something a little more concrete to move forward with. Yeah.
Awesome.
Very nice. Thank you.
In my 2 cents, I think trees are the lowest hanging fruit by far, and they're going to make the biggest difference by far. And from a pedestrian point of view, there are a lot of censorship. That's going to be huge improvement from a safety point of view. And we have, what's his name, Will. He's trying to absorb stormwater. This isn't going to count as one of his credits, but it's going to be hugely important. Right? That's already a flood zone. If we can capture some of those trees, that's going to make the most sense. Also, the borough can move on that tomorrow, right? We're not waiting for some kind of like developer incentive to go on parking. That's something that, we talk with tree commission, say, tree commission, you're underfunded. What can we do to help get you some dollars for that? And obviously we've been having that other conversation about raising money for the tree commission. So
Yeah, we definitely don't have enough money to plant as many trees as we want to. Great.
Yep. Number one hurdle in the money.
Yeah.
we have some schemes we've been talking about for years now.
I have a question for trees. Do they need to be on buckets, or can it just be on?
They could be right behind the curb, right behind the curb.
So looking at on these square, I was like, it's a little.
That's what I'm saying. They could have it right behind the curb, and they can cut it out of well.
No, in the East Corridor wouldn't be the curb, it would just be that paint line.
It would be the shoulder.
Oh,
That's where I would
that's
say
it.
the right.
Well,
It's in right.
well, like I said, is we'd like to see the bump outs occasionally happen to be able to put trees in those. But I mean,
That's
Chip, if you had to put a ballpark, what does it cost to put a tree in? Like one tree,
Well-
cutting a well all the way through.
So the contractor we're using charges $260 to create the well. It's cool, man. They just take a saw and just cut it for my door. And then the trees that we're planting are 525 each.
So let's
And then there's volunteer
That's it.
maintenance, so I mean, you have like your water thingy.
We're talking $800.
So that's included $525.
So we're about $800.
Yeah.
And we only got 11 this year? Gee,
We just don't have enough money.
sure.
So we need fundraisers. We need fundraising events.
Huh.
But that's a whole
Jim, I'm
thing if anybody wants to do that. You gonna do it?
The sidewalk is also obviously the right of way. There's tons of precedent for putting trees
Yeah.
in between on-street parking. 2 cars, tree. Tree is, let's say the on-street parking is 8 feet, put that tree at 6.
Sure. I think, it was the PennDOT, concern. So we would like to see them.
Sure.
They're proposing them.
Yeah.
It's the matter of what can we get.
Sure, but it's worth knocking on PennDOT's door.
Sure. And then that's what I was saying is let's draw, say this is what we'd like to see.
And maybe it's the case that later on, and I just want to apologize guys for being late.
Okay.
I'm blowing up on the totem pole. I had a meeting I couldn't get out. There was a municipality in Ohio that I'm working with that, Ohio ODOT is saying, hey, it's up to you if you want to do trees and planters. And if you go to like Boston and New York and other places, they'll put big planters out there. And I feel like that's a nice way to ease yourself in. Let's say concerned about snow, I know your concerns. Maybe you can move them at times if that becomes an issue or something like that, but you ease your way in. And maybe there's a pathway forward there.
It seems to me we should also address the question. What's the true long-term vision for this area? Do we really want to convert commercial services to residential for all the commercial services out on Annam Avenue? Or do we want to pretty up the commercial services, which is never going to be, beautiful, just by its very nature.
Sure.
So I'm not advocating for one side or the other, but I do think that at some point, rather than wait around for the comprehensive plan committee to give us their vision, maybe we could develop our own vision. Them, which I think they would welcome. This is what we're currently working toward, and are we trying to camouflage ourselves? Trying to make it a walkable, livable
Sure.
community.
Right.
I think the thing in the parking lot was actually, I think, bigger vision of all of the gateways to the borough, north, south, east, and west. This being the one that was seeming to be in intensive care and really just was right to the opportunity. But I just wonder if we go piece by piece, curve cut by curve cut, where are we going? In 30 years, where are we going this thing?
Yeah, sure.
And
I like
I just think we should think about it.
Sure. I mean, I think it's a fair, and I think I'd like to hear from John or Ryan too. I mean, the reality of it is brick and mortar stores are, requiring them. In the town center, I think they make lots of sense there. And I think that pedestrian oriented type of store. But, it is a tough balance to keep everything vibrant, demand high, and rather than, and I like the idea of trying to understand what those cars should be, whether they should be more pedestrian, more residential.
Yeah. I'm not sure the retail in town center dying for there to be a whole lot more retail run out.
No, I think there's a strong argument against it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Right.
Residents, people shop there, absolutely.
Right, right.
But, so I just.
But our streets, I feel like have their own identity. Like you can have this street, this is the thoroughfare of Philadelphia. It has its own identity. It can exist outside of, like, yes, there's a tire store next to it, and we all drive with tires together. Great. I was earlier today on an old, what the guy was claiming was the old route to Philadelphia out by Marshalltown. And it's a beautiful moment. It's on that old back road that ends, but it's lined with these huge old trees. You know, you think of these old roads in Philly, you know, from like that Marshalltown area, you've got these giant trees that are like only, 25 feet apart or something like that. Then your street has its own identity, and it's helping with all the things. And I feel like that would be such a huge improvement, just that, and then it's not taking away from the fact that it's a tire store and it's also not trying to like compete with Gay Street or whatever.
Yeah.
I also think when this goes in, we're gonna have a bunch of people here. And they could be pedestrians coming into town. We already have the high school over here, and there are pedestrians trying to come into town from that place. And it's a really unpleasant walk. And I'm not asking for massive retail opportunities. I'm just asking for people to be able to comfortably walk from the places that basically already exist. And it's in a more pleasant and more Westchester experience kind of way. So that.
So many ideas, like, I know the argument against expanding.
But if you're sitting down at Rita's eating at Orderice, it's amazing how those cars are flying up that road.
Right.
Yeah.
So I like what you said out, incorporating all the major gateways. I like the idea of maybe something hard, laying something out and actually proposing something that we can use as a tool or have people come in. So tree heavy, brick, all the different pieces we want to get in there and then see how we can push it. At least we'd have those couple streets.
Some of that in the plan, and then remember there's a great conversation. With another thing coming in from the north. People residential. It's lots of trees along the golf course, brick line. Laid out, back to that.
That's the nicest way into town.
Yes,
And to the borough, yeah.
That's, you don't think you're coming to the center. You come from the north, should then you come in from the east.
You
But-
got 322.
Yeah.
We do though, we have the community center down here. We have so many things that should be walked to. And it's a high school, a community center, and it's just,
Nobody walks these streets. They walk on Middle Street.
I definitely see people looking.
Students walking.
Now, I think people that don't have cars trying to walk up to the grocery.
people, I 30 years ago was walking all over the place, but my sons do it today. They walk, they have friends who live over here, so they'll cross down. Yeah.
And there's a whole section in the comp plan, to your point, Alan, about the Market Gate East and Hannah Avenue corridors. So,
All right, we just wrap that in. All right, Quincy, that's what you get for doing a nice job.
Good job.
I'll get all the.
All right. Steve. Anything today?
Well, I don't have anything new other than, the stuff that, from 2024, that I was taking a look at. And the only real difference that has with the attainable housing is that it bases it on family income and income rather than housing prices. And I think the thing that we had looked at before was rents and basing it on, rents and average rents, and home prices rather than just based on income and percentage of income. Another place that I looked was State College. I think we have a lot of similarities in State College. State College gave a lot of builder incentives, and even for things like aid restricting against any student rentals in whatever properties that they would, they would deem restricted against. But at the same time, have, if you would add an extra floor, right, so parking, less parking, if they had included the inclusionary housing or the attainable housing. So that's where I'm trying to, thread the needle with some of that.
When you say income, I wasn't quite following you because you're gonna have some kind of income requirement just to be if you're eligible, correct? But you're saying that,
Well, if you can go back, I think it's still up on there. Some of the things that I had. But yes, there are income requirements for it, but for the developer, it would be based on average prices, yeah. I think it's I think it was the other one. But,
I got you. So you're just saying, what are the rents?
I think it's
For sale,
inclusionary
not
stuff,
what
it's
base.
draft, yeah, go to that one. Yeah, requiring, 10%, 85% market rate rather than based on incomes. But yes, yeah, there is gonna have to be, whether if it's true workforce housing, I mean, then it could be for, if you're a policeman, if you're a nurse, it's just a hospital, policeman, the borough, teacher, Westchester area school district. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, so.
And I think there is a difference between like ownership versus rental, like a mortgage payment versus a pet. I thought the cottage courts was actually it's a smart way to be able to improve density, right size homes, get them to be really just cut the square footage down. So regardless of how you look at it, if you're looking at $400 a square foot for a house, it doesn't take too long to understand square foot wise what you need, where you need to be.
Right.
So the cost of land is the big piece. So if you get one house on it, or if you get two, you're suddenly sharing that land price over two homes or three homes or three owners. That's the way you can help get the dollars down.
That's right. But in the incentive, right, I was just talking with the builder, he's got a chunk of land, he's gonna put a duplex on there, he's zero incentive to make a small unit.
Sure.
So it's a 20-foot wide twin, it's gonna be over 3,000 square feet.
Sure. And the tough part is you still have a supply and demand in reality. And then in the reality of it is if somebody can get something for it, if the dollars are there and someone's willing to pay for it. It's sort of like looking at those micro or small units up in New York and seeing what their people are paying for, New York City, and see what they're paying or willing to pay to be there. So it's a tough one to have both, and then just to understand the intent of it is to provide some inclusionary housing for individuals that can want to stay in or get into this area.
While at the same time contributing to the character.
It's a tough,
Senior citizens.
I mean,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yes.
and it is not local. It's not just a Westchester
No, no.
borough issue. It's so it's a really tough challenge. But I do like the idea though of that middle housing and those cottage courts.
Because that's ordinance.
And I think, I think that's kind of the direction that we can make an impact.
So you all have a draft ordinance on cottage court, maybe you can feedback at our next work session,
Okay.
refine that a little bit. Did you guys have a draft copy?
jumping back to you. You were first, so we
Yeah, oh, you got that. Yeah.
You zoom out. Just so we can see the whole screen. Okay, great. This is where we kicked off last time. Next. So Jim sent me the PennDOT layout, which is the handout, I guess, that went with the improvements they did on South High. So I took that and I was trying to figure out what was the metric that they were using for these curves. You know, what can we take away from what PennDOT has already, designed and done on their own. And I was calling out, I guess you can see there's, for me, the CAD lines I'm using, I'm just calling out the same dimensions, right? So we've got 40 feet over there, and if you slide over to the right, the assumption at this location, which is the intersection of Minor and High, so it's a one-way street. It's not oriented, north-south, but going down, right? But then if you slide over to the right, you're seeing 10 foot of lane, 10 foot of turn lane, 12 foot of lane, 8 foot of parking. Okay, next.
lost function.
I can scroll on the screen. Okay. So I don't know what exactly the actual dimensions are on our fire truck. This is 25 feet, right? So this is a city bus here, and you kind of see, okay, what's setting these radii. It's not like there's any standard, right? Like every single one of these curves is different, right? They're just using turning radiuses to determine those, and there is going to be some assumption that there's some overlap, right, on these big buses and fire trucks into some of the other lanes. You're seeing, that's the wheel, and then that's the front of the vehicle. The whole line is the front of the vehicle. Often that's about to extend past the curve. In this case, I'm not holding it to the edge of the curve. Okay, no. This is just one down, right? This is Bernard, and in our case, I think we're about looking at street intersections. This to me is a little bit more valuable, but I did want to juxtapose the two of them because you see it necking down here. PennDOT or this is the national state highway regulations called a choke point, but really trying to bring cars down. So at Minor Street, it was 15 feet here. They're keeping it a little bit wider to capture, so it would have been down here, right? Because it's a one-way going the opposite direction. But you see how the right turn lane, okay, what's dictating these? You see a really tight one here, and it's just trying to accommodate the turning radii of your first responders, the big of those being fire trucks. Basically, you design our fire companies keep getting bigger trucks, and then we keep designing our roads around them. Charleston, the city, interestingly, the mayor there, they were at this loggerhead between the fire chief saying, we need to keep expanding our roads, but they have this downtown district, the French Quarter, and they said, okay, great, we'll just buy a small fire truck. And you actually see that in Philadelphia. They have smaller fire trucks and actually smaller trash trucks. But in this case, here's our typical SEPTA bus, which I'm using as my trucks. Fire truck. Here we're at the intersection. I'm going to start on two high intersections, and then we're going to look at Adams and we talked about this.
Bernard.
Bernard. So, it's Bernard, where Bernard is a two-way, so that's a two-way,
Mhm.
two-way. In this case, we're dealing with a one-way on the High Street, right? So I took the same exact pad lines, right, from Bernard and High and South, and I've overlaid them here, go in the right direction. So if you're coming, page down, from Middle Street here, I know that this is not the most efficient bump out layout. Bernard is narrower, which is forcing, for example, this to be the dimension it is. But at this point, we've got 7997, and that's a relatively typical, town center on-street parking to drive in, and it slows people down. Just that width is slowing people down. But at this point, what we could do is we could over that PennDOT's own drawings on this intersection, and you could cut out about 10 feet of pedestrian walking. When we're talking about that view shed, you don't get it on this side, right? Because of the way that you have to turn, it's all about the right turns of the fire truck. But you would capture that at this intersection. I'm sure that at PennDOT, this is not right. I know just enough turning radiuses for my work. The civil engineers will do a lot better job, or the trucking engineers will do a better job at being able to tighten these up a little bit. But even I can see that we can cut out 10 feet of walking right there, and we've seen examples of how to do that with bump outs, but also canes. And I just wanted to make the point. No, this is just another one of, we're looking at that intersection and then confirming, right, it's that same turning radius. It is slightly different widths here, right? Bernard doesn't have the parking on both sides of that intersection with High. But here we do have the parking on both sides. So you're showing essentially, hey, I'm not interrupting the parking, but my fire trucks can turn there. And what I wanted to show next is if you take that up to Walnut at this location is actually slightly wider than North High. And so similar story, it's a one-way. So let's just take PennDOT's diagrams and bring it up. In this case, if you're doing the same thing, let's say you slide that back a little bit. There's no need for a pedestrian walkway to be that wide. Those were PennDOT's drawings. Let's say that you wanted to make sure, hey, your yellow stripe one goes here. We want to make sure we don't touch parking. Great. Well, my pedestrian walkway currently is, I think they're typically 8, and it's right there. If you were just to widen, if you were just to have this bump out here, not like PennDOT drew, but just all the way into the intersection, you can still get all your fire truck movement through there, and you will have eliminated, I think, 12 feet at that intersection. Well, that's slow. Everything's 4-way stops. That's the big takeaway, I think, on this that I was thinking of. That somebody said, or maybe I was listening to the recording of the presentation on the South High Street improvements, and they said, hey, we've done all that we can while not slowing down movement through town. It's like, oh, right, fine. There you go. Why do we have pedestrian issues? Why are there so many accidents? It's because we're committed to, we'll do whatever we can except slow down traffic.
Right.
Okay, well,
I know.
as long as we're going to continue to accept that this, whatever it is today, 2026, that's the benchmark for traffic, then we can only do so much. This is a step in the right direction, especially on High and Walnut. I guess the point here is that I do think it would be an improvement here. It's not going to affect parking. It doesn't affect the fire truck. It doesn't affect anything. Just short of it. But Walnut's not going to be not nearly as much. As soon as you get down to High, now you're danger. Okay, so this is the intersection that we kind of agreed. I think Will had suggested, and I'm going to Williams. He had said, hey, I really think that you should look at this intersection. So this is Bernard and South Adams. And you can see it's 4-way. So with the one-ways, there's definitely a lot of room for choking down. right? Like at Minor Street, they brought that lane down 15 feet, PennDOT did, right? It doesn't restrict your buttons or something. Here, we've got right turns all the way around. And we've got, we've got 2 lanes, so we've got right turns all the way around. So we're more restricted. It's the same parkway dimensions as North High in front of Bill, so that's what I'm pointing out. So we've got 997 here. So 9 travel, 7 parking. And over here, you actually have an extra foot, so let's say you have 7, 9, 6, 9, 6. And if what you were doing is fixing your car turn radiuses, like your typical car, and these are very conservative, quite conservative. Like if you were down there actually driving, your turn would be a lot tighter. But let's just place the car turn radius, so you draw in those lanes that we just talked about, right? So we've got 9, 9, 7, and you start pulling your radiuses in. You know, you see, I'm showing the hatched area, which is being formed by your car radius. So if we weren't worried about first responders, and which obviously we are, so I'm not saying we are, and Amazon delivery, box trucks, U-Hauls, whatever else. So we're just 11 feet between axles, let's say, and big trucks are a little bigger than 2. Then you would start to shape your intersections like that. So I showed 2 directions, and I'll show the other directions of like how that got shaped. Notice here, this car, that's my center line, right? So I actually had to I had 9, 6, 9, 6, 7, right? I had to slide with the car diagram. I'm over in the other lane, and I'm still put in that corner. If that corner works. So I just want to reiterate that these are conservative. And also we have situations like, you say, well, if it doesn't meet the diagram, well, this right-hand turn already in our current reality doesn't fit the car diagram. Okay, so what I wanted to show was there would be a reality where maybe not raised bump outs, but painted, right? We could outline in this intersection that Will had pointed out. The other ones, fine, you could build it out, you could put curves there and everything. And this one approach could be at this intersection is you outline the areas that a regular vehicle would not need to cross, you paint those. But you couldn't put up a temporary curve because it's a little messy here, but you're seeing the fire truck on all 4 corners essentially just driving over. But you can get the fire truck to work at this intersection, but it's going to drive on top of all of your painted bump outs. So whatever you do there, you would need to assume that it's going to be pavement. And just the last couple things, I just wanted to pull up. That's one tool in the toolbox, right? That we're talking about pedestrian safety. This is probably the first time I've ever put a federal highway thing on a slide, but here are the things that they say, like, hey, these are ways to protect pedestrians, right? And so we have an example of this, in front of the county courthouse, where you have a mid-block crosswalk. Because back to that diagram, our intersections are kind of obviously the widest area, right? Like the biggest area you ever need in your town is an intersection if you're driving. But we saw PennDOT narrowed it down to 15 feet, right? That's plenty of room for a fire truck. Fire truck doesn't need that way. They narrowed it down to 15 feet, and you'll see here they're calling that they call it a choker, but where you narrow a road down to slow down traffic. So this is a raised crosswalk, and that could be mid-block, like in front of the highway, the county building, or that could be at intersections. That's definitely costly, right? Like to actually build that up. But if you did a mid-block one, to the point earlier, you could really narrow down what that pedestrian passage is going to be. And the point earlier about trees in the right of way, trees in our town are always in the right. Well, street trees are in the right of way. That's where that curve is, right? Because your sidewalks cross in the right of way. And when you have this opportunity for a mid-block crosswalk, really cool thing that you'll see municipalities do a lot which is, you're seeing it right here. I think you can do a much smaller one, which is your on-street parking pauses. And then you put a tree and then you have a narrow crosswalk. So actually, it's not like you're stepping out from between cars, you know, like you got a little space and you can say, well, you're taking up on-street parking. Yes, but I think an argument could also be made to measure a block, and there are measurements for that. So I think even maybe South High, they strike the individual spaces, and those I think are typically 22 feet. Sometimes they're I think South High is 21 feet. So let's say you did 21 feet, and then you're on a block and you realize you have that extra 7 feet. Okay, but you slide that up on either side, and if you've striped out where people are parking, now you've got this space that you can paint a mid-walk crosswalk, as opposed to being at an intersection where it's the widest area. You can narrow that down to, in the case of North High and Adams, 18 feet, right? Because those are 9-foot driveways. So raised crosswalk or a grade mid-block, and you end up, that's a great pedestrian thing. I think of some of the stuff you're showing. Okay, next one, raised intersection. This one's definitely very expensive, but I just want to put out what are the ways they're talking about, improving pedestrian safety. So raised intersections, you see that around downtown areas, you know. But I just wanted to show a couple examples that are not expensive, right? This is Annapolis. So you see, they did what I was talking about at South Adams, or I think they're doing what I was talking about at South Adams, is they're painting it, but there's no curb, so your trucks can just drive right over that. So you could paint, I mean, for example, you see right here, obviously, you paint the intersection, slow people down a little bit, but you could paint where like, well, cars turn here, but if you're a fire truck, you turn over, right over the paint where you want. So the Port Annapolis is showing us, the Port Man's solution of the unraised intersection. And again, in Annapolis, you see in their downtown intersections, like how do they get these turning radiuses to work? And it's a combination of mountable curves just holding that turning radius as tight as you can. So you have some, like the pavement kind of gradually raises, and at this point you are at a raised intersection, but you're not over here. So I don't know if it's truly a raised intersection. You're playing with Annapolis, playing with race, and they're just making that as tight as they can in that downtown moment, including allowing their fire truck turning radius wheels to mount a little bit. All really good ways to protect the pedestrian and make it more liquid. And then the last two ones, I just let the corner extension pull out. That's the one, but that's what we've been calling our curb extension or our bump out. And the other one was the chauffeuring. Here they're doing it right here at the end of Meyer, slowing things down as they come out. But you could do all of those DVs in a mid-block scenario where you're driving, you've got cars, whatever, and especially if you use your 21 feet or 22 feet, you end up with that extra 8 feet, 7 feet, whatever. You put them opposite each other, you turn it into a tree well, or you put the tree in pots or whatever, but then you bring those trees out, and so now you connect that street down from a perception point that you're driving down it. You've got these trees that are bringing you in, and that's the natural place to have a mid-block crosswalk.
Very good.
So,
Did you look specifically at Adams and did you put something that we can turn back over to Will? That was it.
So scroll up to that intersection.
you can't,
Oh, I'm sorry.
you can't do that.
Scroll back to that intersection. That is. That's our intersection. So the point being,
Sure, but I was wondering, no, my only ask was if you put something together from a
It's,
graphic.
it's on there.
sure.
It's in there. I see it.
I'm looking to convey it to Will. So Will can read it and then he can pass it on to somebody
Yes.
to say how much to make this.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. This is, yeah, you're right, I don't have that. This is the framework for that. That's my argument or my suggestion, because I would want, before we even develop that, like, is this a good approach? there's no way to do it and allow for the turn. We have, whatever we propose would have to be able to be driven over by a fire truck. So there are multiple ways to do that. So the highway thing said, well, you could raise your intersection. That would be great. So if this whole intersection got raised, the fire truck would go over it, and the giant speed bump that slows things down. We're not gonna get that, at least at the beginning. But that could be like our long-term vision, right? And then you could say, well, from a pedestrian point of view, you could say, Thomas, I know you wanted to do this, but like really the mid-block crosswalk is the better one. Let's start measuring out and figure out where our trees go in the mid-block crosswalk. So that would be another way to approach that transportation instead.
Can I just, I love the mid-block crosswalk
Yeah.
at the Y. There's the Y in the parking lot. And I got so much pushback every time I breathe that out loud. So I'm just gonna say that again to be said. But here, I was there maybe yesterday. There's a bus stop at that corner and there's a bus and our borough council tried to get the buses to stop mid-block. They will not. We passed an ordinance and they're like, no, we will not do this. We think it is so much safer to stop at the ends, so they're stopping at the ends. They're stopping at the end there. They're letting kids off. The kids are being picked up by parents in their cars. They're running catty corner across the streets. Most of them are running, in the crosswalks, but they have siblings who are crouched down it's a very lively, beautiful community of people who are all outside, being supportive, being there for each other. They're not gonna be crossing at the mid-block.
Yeah, well, and so I appreciate that. So
Yeah.
this is, and part of the reason I don't have like a proposal, it's more like a study of like, here are the existing conditions. This is what happens when I put the free on there, the different vehicles. This is what the federal government is saying, pedestrian, friendly things we can do. Great point. So another option is the one that I showed in Annapolis, which is, hey, what if we paint essentially the areas that we kind of marked off? We could do a beautiful painting. We could paint the center. We could also, I'm sure that you get pushback here, but maybe you measure from this end, you say 21 feet, 21, 20, 21. Your yellow only goes to here,
Right.
but if I add 7 feet, I can extend out and I can sort of make that slightly
A little bit bigger,
right?
yeah.
You make the argument that we're not removing a parking spot, somebody will say, yeah, but I only park on 16 feet. In which case you are removing a parking spot. But we could try to gain a little bit more room there. Maybe that's what a study like this should include. Hey, let's measure from the outside, come in, figure that thing out. And then I would want to propose something that's a little bit like this, where there's some paint on the edges, you can drive over top of it, maybe somewhere in the center. I would love to drop something if the planning commission thought that would be valuable to the exercise.
I personally do think so.
No basketballers, because we don't have room.
Right.
It would literally be painting.
No, I think that works, and I think it visually narrows up that, and I think when you're driving with or without signs or anything, laws are, the pedestrians have the right of way, and they're expected to cross at corners, otherwise they're jaywalking. So
Yep.
crossing out or jumping between cars is bad anyway. To encourage and provide a safe, at every intersection for pedestrians, as well as increase, I'll just say visibility from the car standpoint, because it's gonna hold cars back.
So I guess I wanted to make a couple other points too, to the point of like, I would hate to just end this one, because this doesn't actually include any of the real potential for bump outs in the future and the little house bars. So that's why I wanted to pair it with the High Street example and the Walnut Street example.
Sure.
And also make the point that we had a discussion with Andy, said, where do we start with our town? So in my mind, that was kind of the driving thought of, well, at what threshold do the bump outs no longer make sense? We hit it, right? Adams and Bernard. There's literally no room for bump outs that could be curves, unless they're multiple curves. Like, you do the whole Annapolis Center thing. But we could do this, but we do have lots of places where curved bump outs do make sense. And that's the point that I make. Like Walnut is a great example. Any place where you have a one-way street, you have two less right turns, and then you end up being able to really bring that in. So I think if we're looking around the borough, for places where this could work. One-way intersections. Going through.
Yeah.
And, that, the dimensions that we had here are kind of the threshold for, 25, 26 feet. When it's not gonna be reasonable to approach that with a thought that we can actually get bump out, something we can get with paint. But the fire truck, that's like just barely, right? So I think that was, yeah.
I'm gonna put design comments on this, but can I ask that when you're drawing that up, you're using design elements from the new parking signage, like focus on those colors and maybe combining the Westchester Borough flag? Like I want to really limit the aesthetics of what we're pushing in the borough.
This page right here.
No, whatever you're painting.
Oh, I'll flip it to you.
Okay, you said you wanted to draw something up, so I'm like, well, if you're gonna say so, I'm gonna demand that you. Okay,
That'd be great.
all right.
I'll let you go.
Give me some shapes and I'll plug stuff in.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
I'll send you, high and middle,
Uh-huh.
not middle on this,
Yes, and I'll just
perfect.
decide what paint goes where. You do?
I think that's great.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I thought you had it. I'm like, give me more.
Buses don't stop in the middle of the street. They're not allowed to.
Oh,
Well, I went to the Y last summer and kids they would literally.
oh no, that bus is different.
Yeah,
But I mean, there is a balance there too, because I'll just go back to our preservation, historic character. And there's a point there from an aesthetic standpoint that I just want to be sensitive to.
Yeah.
That we don't turn the streets all into a giant.
Into a expo.
And that's
Right.
part of the reason I brought up the Annapolis downtown one. It's just brick. They're only
Yeah.
doing.
That's why I think
I don't
brick
want to-
paint that actually looks like brick is not a terrible idea,
Sure.
That's a good point.
especially in
And I
parts
think,
of the town.
yeah, and I think somewhere in between there, we can look at things, but I don't want it to look like graffiti. I want it to be an enhancement, not
Yeah.
a detraction. So,
I was in New York a couple weeks ago, and those were like a sort of taupe.
Mhm.
And they did have plastic bollards, and even Stephanie, you're crossing the bike lane a lot of times to get into them, but people would, but other people. My family and I, should go out there, and walk out there. But
And one thing you see too, is on that highway thing, is people will use those Belgian blocks as kind of rumble strips before you get to that intersection too. Like, if you had a couple lines of that, it brings in, that traditional character.
I think with dollars and stuff, it would be a great way to treat
Hey, my mom is a
it.
Yeah, we know somebody's mom who can paint stuff.
Okay, thank you, Thomas, really nice.
Yeah.
Do you have anything on your preservation stuff for today, or you wanna?
So, I was talking with a developer who's looking at, a lot that might be a good test case for some of this. It's got existing buildings,
Okay.
so hey, is there a way to preserve some of this historic character? It's a small lot that they have permissions right now to subdivide and build a twin. But I asked him if he would join us at our next working session just to discuss the project,
Mhm.
because he has a by right plan in front of him. And I just thought, hey, let's just discuss, if there are other options and if there are buildings here that we can try to help save.
If you could, can you just remind me or touch base with that?
I'll have him reach
individual
out to you.
And just make sure he's still on board for that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I can make sure he's on the agenda.
Yeah. But I think it would be a good test case for the cottage court concept.
Yeah.
Can a cottage court work on this lot and how would that change this?
Yeah. Okay, so that's it for new business. We have a motion to approve the April 2026 meeting minutes. Move to approve, I'll second that. Oh, anybody have any comments on it?
Beautiful for
I do.
As usual.
Yeah, can we get rid of the big ramp?
Sure.
Thank you, Matt. Nice job.
Uh,
Okay. Proposed ordinance data centers. Has everybody had a chance to review or have any comments?
Do you mind just giving us just like an executive real quick? Assuming it's saying.
No, it's not what to say. It actually,
Says you can.
in all municipalities, you have to require all use groups.
Yeah, right.
Kristen has written this, it allows it in the industrial district, which really
Okay.
is, there's two properties. There's A.D. Pyle's property and there's Eli Khan's property, which is the old Wyeth lab. And that's really the only two that potentially could accommodate. One of them was actively working as a business. The other one has potential there, which is the 29 or 30 acres that like.
So was the intent to get in front of this? I guess it just simply wasn't
Well,
a use. Huh?
I think it simply is not a use presently, but I believe that it was in a reaction to East Whiteland Township had approved a data center. And it's 1 million square foot one. So you can't really see it from any other roadway. So I think out of the awareness that, oh, this could happen, because there are other size data centers and other functions or these things that could exist on a smaller. It's just to put some, get out in front of it quickly and get something that puts some constraints and parameters on that. I think it all seems reasonable. I talked to Tom Comita about it. He had written one. He also reviewed this. He had no comments relative to what was good or bad relative to it. I think it's a very good idea that we have something in place, just get out in front of anybody that's potentially looking. And the biggest concerns are power, water, sound, right?
Mhm.
So it's not really a traffic or a school impact or anything like that. It's really
I have a concern about them. Would we be making a motion tonight?
that is the request from our solicitors.
My concern is land use. My concern is land use. You know, we're a mile and a half, and it's that, you know, obviously, data centers are going to be part of the future, and it is what it is. And I think, you know, there's a lot of, probably, hopefully a lot of great things about that, but given that we're a mile and a half, about a mile and a half, if what one could build on a huge segment of the town, I can't remember how many acres the Wyeth property is a data center, it does beg the question.
It's about 30.
30 acres. Is that the best use of that land for the town? And you could say, yeah, but there's a deed restriction. Yeah, but you could, whatever. But there's nothing that said that we as zoning has to limit it to Amazon warehouse or data center. So I just think that this is a great opportunity to just reassess. Would that be the best use of the land in the borough? And from a zoning point of view, could we say, we just passed a unified, whatever it's called, for
Residential development.
residential development. Would it be appropriate to include an area like this as part of that? Deed restrictions can always be lifted and places can be remediated, and there's new technologies for that. And so I just think that, I think it's a great thing to pass something for the data center, but it's also a great opportunity to just think, is this really the best use of land in a borough? Or could we, as right now, Eli can do that probably by right. He can't build anything residential by right, despite all the other things. Zoning could at least reflect the better use of that land, which I would argue would be a neighborhood.
I mean, I agree with you. I like the idea of a development or a residential development. The problem is why have you left that deed restricted, that restriction on that property?
The problem is also that our zoning doesn't allow residential.
That's true, because presently it's industrial.
And a developer it will take a whole lot for them to look at something they can't do by right. So all I mean to say is, like, I'm not saying that we have a tool in our toolboxes, which is we could put an overlay. The unified residential district is an overlay, correct?
Presently,
That's overlay.
presently, it's a allowed by right use in the town center.
Well, I'm sorry,
It's not,
it's not. Right, but perhaps, we could turn something like that into an overlay and extend it into that industrial, just gives you an option. You wanna build a data center or that, and obviously there are a bunch of other hurdles, but zoning should not be another thing on top of. For all we know, Eli's looking at 4 things, like I've gotta do this deed restriction, I've gotta remediate, and that Dan Burrow's got it zoning all mixed up. We might as well put zoning in the right place. And I just think this is a good impetus to talk about.
I don't disagree. I think it's fair enough to understand. I wasn't, party to, I don't know if anybody was, when that restriction put in place, it was solely on Wyeth before they even released the property, because even on the comprehensive plan, that property across the street was actually, identified as a potential alternate location for public works in the future, but that's now. But the idea that of having that, I would much rather have that as mixed use and residential high density, but I don't know, what steps would have to take place, but I certainly have you said.
But that's also above our pay grade, like,
Right.
what is our purview of zoning? And it's been locked away as industrial, so you can by right do an Amazon fulfillment center, you can do whatever the other thing, you can do a data center. And maybe those are, like, you can make a strong argument that's better than it sitting there empty. But this is a good opportunity, I think, for us as the borough to say, would it be better for that to be a neighborhood? Because it's kind of a hole and it exists, like there are neighborhoods that kind of bump up against that. Wouldn't it be better to be a neighborhood? And then we can do our little part, which is might as well put an overlay on top of it that says, hey, Eli, by right, you could do residential. And that might light a fire for him to say, maybe it's worth starting to pursue what would the legal cost be to lift that deed restriction. So by all means, I think we should pass this, but I just think it's a good option to bring it up.
Sure. And I think we can certainly always raise the question with Eli. If that was given the option, is that a viable?
Would that be worth doing before changing the zoning? I mean, if it's an overlay, then you allow both.
I'll put it this way, if we have a conversation with him, and he says, I would much prefer to build mixed use townhomes, apartment buildings, for sale condominium, I don't like whatever it is. But if he said that would be his preference and how he might be able to parse that out with the dollar impact or the financing, whatever it might be, certainly it's more preferable from, I think from my standpoint, I don't know what it is, but over a data center or a distribution center. I think it's a tough location for distribution or.
But even, let's say that you change the zoning. Developers are aware of zoning. So
Sure.
we change the zoning. And developer that we've never heard of is aware of the fact we changed the zoning. He goes to Eli and says, hey, so I guess I don't know why we would have the conversation first with Eli as opposed to just, let's do what's in the best interest of the borough.
But I think the.
Yes, but another developer could approach him and say, hey, they changed the zoning on this. I'm interested in buying this from you.
Well, I think this is where Tom Esky would come in handy.
Sure.
Because I think the idea of trying to understand why it's the restrictions that they put onto that property.
But why does that have purview on zoning? Like, what does it matter?
Well, they deed restricted it to never allow residential on there because their concern is legacy suits.
Yeah.
So we get them permission to build houses 20 years from now, everybody's coming down that has leukemia or something.
Sure.
And you're like, what happened? And you're like,
Yeah.
hey, I insisted they have houses there. And you go, you guys in a room. So I think the idea there is to understand what's the risk, what's the exposure,
Mhm.
and then and find out how that could happen. So I don't disagree that I would much prefer.
Yeah, I think that's a strong argument. I also would say that you have a huge corporation that does not care about our borough. And it has been holding 30 acres hostage for a long, long time. And so to some extent, us, trying to tiptoe around like, oh, what did they do? And where's the legality there? They don't care about our borough. They did that because it was cheaper to do that. It was it was an Excel spreadsheet. It's cheaper to put a deed restriction on this than to clean it up. That was it. And so we have 30 acres of our land that they've been, holding hostage for 25, 30, however many, 50 years. And so I think we should be somewhat bold in just saying it's better to be a residential development and leave it to the lawyers.
Right. Well, I don't disagree with you. I like it. We have a borough council member here. We can certainly continue that conversation. Yeah, we're looking at you.
I mean, I agree. I don't think there's any harm or downside to, if we can, making it overlay, extending that, whatever it is, allowing residential from a zoning perspective on that parcel. And then let the developers figure out how to do residential if they want. And if it's all of a sudden cheaper than it was when they made the deed restrictions, to clean it up. I mean, there are new technologies. I still think in the end, we won't get residential because I think the legacy contamination is probably too significant of a cost to actually clean up to a residential standard. But
I think you're right.
I think,
why are
I
we
agree that,
adding to that?
right, I agree that lifting a zoning restriction, allowing it would let others figure that out. And maybe we'll end up with a better answer. So whether Eli will do it or not, who cares? I agree with the general approach, and I don't know that it'll get us what we want, but at least it removes one barrier. So I agree with that.
And we're not specific, I mean, we are specifically talking about the Wyeth property, but we're talking about changing the zoning for the whole area, not just,
Well, industrial would have to also include like all these other uses, like the data center. It just seems like
Right,
that's like a
but
huge contiguous.
we're not talking just about the zoning of Wyeth. We're talking about zoning of the whole industrial area.
Talk about Wyatt, but not changing the zoning, but just putting an overlay. And the overlay would just say, hey, you have the option.
Only with one.
Why wouldn't we do more than just Wyeth?
Maybe you're right.
Only because I think it's putting the borough at a weird spot where we're taking responsibility for something that Wyeth did, and we don't want to be there. No?
I think it's a land use thing.
Yeah.
You're looking at where the zoning lines are, and you're saying, this is a big chunk of area that has neighborhood adjacent. Should the zoning, is it the best use of the borough for this brownfield that's been brownfield forever to stay industrial, or should we put that residential?
I think what Borough Council is trying to do is just get something on the books, controlling, giving some parameters anywhere in the borough that deals with data centers.
Yeah.
Because right now, there's nothing, which means they.
Oh, yeah,
And we'd still be doing
we are
that.
doing that.
We're gonna do that too. This is just a bigger picture.
Yeah, this is just like, and since you're bringing it up, we should also just talk about 30 acres that's been held hostage
Well,
by a huge corporation that doesn't.
But that wouldn't put the borough.
yeah,
It wouldn't.
It doesn't,
I mean, Tom Esty would have to weigh in, but I don't think so. There's still requirements to build residential that you would have to meet. This would just allow them to try to meet it if they wanted to
that's right.
build it.
Don't we have to have something industrial? Don't we have to?
Yeah, so, but it would just be an overlay, which is a.
Well, right now, if you looked at a zoning map, this property right here, as well as up in this corner, this is all the ID right
Mhm.
here. That's it. So right now, A Dewey Pile is basically occupying 30% of it. It's $1 billion company. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think it's really that Neal Street property. That 29 acres is really at most it's gonna be really that.
And Matt, there's, the cleanup of that is impossible.
No, nothing's impossible. It's just how much it costs. And I believe it would still be cost prohibitive to clean it up for residential purposes, but let somebody else decide that. I think Tom is just saying, let's remove that barrier. So in case somebody wants to figure it out, do it, because they make way more money by building 30 acres of residential.
Yeah.
Let's let them try.
Yeah, I mean,
Right now.
I agree. You look at an area that's big, this area right here, and pick it up and put it down, see many homes are in there. And even if they just weren't singles, moving the duplexes, you could look at that and spread that cost across a good amount of.
And I think we'd have to overcome, and I think Tom Esty would have to weigh in, overcome the potential problematic idea of spot zoning. I think,
It touch it, I mean, I think you can just extend NC2, it's adjacent to NC2, it's not spot zoning, you're just like grabbing 30 acres.
okay, yeah.
And especially if it's,
I'm not-
it's not like you're putting it in NC2.
Right.
You're just saying, hey, we have a overlay that would allow, you get the option. let's run 2 pro formas.
Yeah, as long as,
A neighborhood, Amazon, or data center. That's the old one. It's a block class.
There you go.
I'm looking for a certain, there's an interactive.
It's all the,
Yeah,
it's all the front page, yeah.
not that.
Front page for what? Because it's easy to see where the ID, where that district is.
There you go.
And so
And so this is the flood. Equity. Yeah, that overlays that. And I think we've talked before, Thomas, about the idea of maybe opening that up to air, daylight rather than choking it down with pipes and how much you could. It could work for you.
Yeah, it's amazing how much, yeah, you can fit down that what you do.
But this is really what we're. So I think the data center, like reading through the proposed ordinance, everything makes sense about it. If we were just accepting the fact that that was a potential, which it is. I don't think it's a reality because of the economics, but that there's a lot of people here, but I'm not sure it's the ideal location. You could be just outside the borough for significantly less dollars in land and
Sure,
have the water to cool.
but it makes a lot of sense to have something, so.
For sure. So, I mean, let's just get the ordinance pushed out of the way. So I'm gonna propose that we recommend to Borough Council that they adopt the ordinance as written to allow data centers and data center campuses.
I'll second that.
Darrell, any comments? Okay. Alan?
Yes.
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 That was easy. Now, we'll get back to that second one. We'll bring that back up next month, Thomas. And we'll see if we can get Tom as
That'd be great.
to weigh in. And I think, give him a heads up. Maybe he has access to that agreement or whatever it might be. Maybe somebody more qualified, that I can understand what's in that suit.
Yeah.
But I agree with Matt's comment. You can do anything you want to for the dollars. I mean,
Well,
you
I
think,
mean, I could, yeah, I've looked a little bit at that. That is, well, that's work I did. It's environmental remediation. It's just, it's all about how much, where it is. That's not hard. There's a reason they deed restricted. Thomas said, there's a dollar figure that they didn't want to pay, so
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to do a deed restriction.
And unfortunately, they don't care and it's 30
No, of
acres
course
of
not.
land.
They're gone.
It's really kind of tragic.
it would be,
It was nasty back then. My only comment, and I didn't have comments on the ordinance itself, but, and maybe I'll bring it up when we talk about it, but my concern is enforcement is, there's a lot in here and it's good because it makes it less attractive, I would hope, to put a data center there, including like tier 4 requirements for generators. Those are like, these are fairly strict. So hopefully this really disincentivizes putting a data center out here. But the only way this works is if we as a borough can enforce all of these limits. And we have trouble with our rental properties and other, and that's because of lack of funding, a lack of manpower. There's all sorts of reasons we know. This is way more complicated. And so I hope I hope we just don't get a data center because I think it's gonna be really difficult to enforce all this stuff. I know we put the onus on the owner, but, you know, we know they will be incentivized to do it. So I think it's gonna be really tough to police if we do get one of these.
I think it's better to have it on the books than not.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
this is, like I said, this disincentivizes from my perspective, because there are a lot of requirements, and they're good requirements. This really follows exactly the county's guidance on this.
I was on council for 4 years trying to get something to monitor sound, and this is gonna force Aaron to get something to monitor sound, so.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
That's one,
eventually,
that's one thing. There's a whole lot more.
yes,
So,
eventually one thing might get done, maybe two. We'll
That would
see.
be, I just want to put that, out there.
Sure.
That's
Fair.
my concern.
Okay, 410 South High Street, 3 townhouses. Since we last met, I don't know if, I know Quinty you missed the meeting, but had an opportunity to watch it on video, which is good. The group and the applicants went in and met with the Shade Tree Commission. So Chip is here. I don't know if you want to come on up and, and the only reason I keep asking the group is there's a microphone up here.
That's right.
So for video purposes or audio, if you can kind of catch us up to speed.
Yeah, so the landscape architect, Patrick Stewart, his name, attended our meeting and it's all good. I mean, he agreed to pretty amenable whatever we wanted. So I don't know if you've read John Hospeck's review letter, but Patrick agreed to everything that's in there. So just to the highlights here, their plan has 16 street trees of 2 tree species. John wanted 4 just for diversity. So I agreed to that. The tree ordinance requires that you make a note that you're responsible for perpetual maintenance and replacement within 60 days. So we're gonna add that. He wanted something added about coordinating tree locations and underground utilities. And then there was a thing about having sufficient soil volume so that it accommodates the canopy trees. So that was everything in the letter. So then some other things to discuss. There was at last week's meeting, there was a guy that talked about a tree on Dean in the corner. We weren't really sure whether that's on the property or not. Patrick Stewart was going to look at it. The tree's not in very good condition, so if it's on their property, it's definitely going to go. But even if it's not, I think it probably should. Yeah, that one. That's pretty
Oh.
bad.
Yeah,
So I'm hoping that even if it's not, that the applicant would agree to take it down
Mhm.
with neighbor's permission. Oh, while you're there, somebody last time mentioned overhead wires,
Yes.
but those are vertical. Those are not horizontal to Dean Street, so they're not a problem.
Well, there's somewhere in our zoning and our saldo that asks for utilities to be placed in the ground. But when we look at the bulk of the perimeter, it was really along Price Street. There's one.
Right, that's right. But I think somebody made the comment, does that impact what trees you plant there? And it doesn't because it's vertical.
I still would like to see them take the opportunity while we're doing all this work, especially for the adjacent neighbors, which
Right.
again, we did get a comment within Chester County's planning commission relative to the historic resources and their contribution. So it would be nice to be able to drop these.
Right.
Clean that.
Right, yes.
Yeah, I think the overhead line comment was mine, and that was on Price Street.
Yeah, Price Street definitely interfered with what trees you plant there. Let's see what else. So Patrick brought up along South High that their plan has trees and tree wells, but he made the suggestion that we actually have a planting strip there, which might be nicer.
Like a strip all the way along, a grass strip all the way along.
Yeah, because there's no parking there, so you wouldn't have a lot of foot traffic.
I saw that. I like that.
I think that's a good idea.
Again, it's one of those ones where we're looking at hard material.
Right,
It would be great to
Right.
narrow that out.
so who's gonna look at that? And then we brought up that gateway entrance on Price and South High. He was gonna look at that, but he wasn't really sure what he could do as far as additional landscaping there.
Yeah, it was not a lot because they were just taking advantage of the.
Well, there's something,
Because of the trapezoid.
Mhm.
yeah, I think there was something in Tom Comita's comments about adding something there.
He was seeing that as a potential.
Yeah.
gateway.
So that's a possibility. And that's pretty much it.
I wanted to understand better, if there was kind of pushback on the silver cells or, potential that they were concerned about.
So
What do they cost?
solar cells are expensive. I don't know how much they cost, but it's a burden. The tree ordinance now, it's a tree ordinance requires solar cells. But John Hosback, who's our new borough arborist, doesn't like it.
Oh,
So the other thing, it's, what's it called?
Is that a
Structure-
style though? Where
I don't-
is the,
I think it's in the, I think it's installed over the tree ordinance. I'm not really sure. But there's something that John likes called structural soil, which I guess is,
yeah. I bumped into that.
yeah, so I guess that's less expensive, and the idea is to get as much soil in there so you allow the tree roots to grow. So John was proposing structural soil, which Patrick Stewart was fine with. We may want to eventually change the ordinance, not require silver cells.
give the option,
Yeah,
because the goal is to get the trees healthy.
right,
To
right,
allow those
Right.
roots to expand. and
right,
grow.
exactly, yeah.
I don't know enough about trees.
That's you. No, but obviously we have ordinances that are pushing, that are.
Yeah, but I
we're
think-
just trying to get as
Yeah,
many healthy trees out there.
yeah. Anything else?
No, I think that was, did anybody have any questions?
I'd love to get your, to send you, I'm sure I could get your contact from the borough website, but we've been kicking around
Yeah.
thoughts on, street tree. How can zoning help the street tree, work efforts? And I remember we talked to, you guys maybe 2 years ago, but we'd already been before that in our own comp plan. It's 2 chapters in our comp plan. It's hugely
Okay.
important.
Okay,
And what can zoning do to assist, even if it's in a very small way? And so,
Okay.
I just have a policy proposal that we've kind of talked about.
yeah, sounds
I'd
good,
love to
yeah,
send to you.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, anything we can do to coordinate, where we should be planting trees, I think makes sense. We just sort of walk around where it makes sense. We don't
Yeah.
really have a master plan,
Yeah, sure.
but I think particularly for the business district, we could benefit from some kind of a master plan of,
Sure.
because there are a number of blocks that still don't really have many trees.
Is that something your commission has, or maybe have a map of the borough and you're identifying locations or?
Not really, no, I mean, no, because to do it right, you need a lot more money than we have. And so we're saying, well, maybe we'll do 10 or 12 a year, which is probably, it's a many-year process.
That's right. I think
Yeah.
I've seen 10 or 12 be cut down this spring. So-
Yeah, that's what we did, and that's really all we can afford to do, so. But, the budget is what it is, there's not much you can do about
Well,
that.
we tried asking, if they could be included in Parks and Rec as an extension of, recreation space or park space that includes sidewalks with the trees.
But they get most of their money from grants.
Right, but then that's exactly what we were saying. Hey,
Yeah.
that's considered, right? What's the public realm? Like what's, we're always talking about like little park space and you end up with this little forgettable piece of land from the developer. But
Yeah.
really, our park is our town. It really
Yeah, that's
is the
true.
Sidewalks, it's the public realm.
Well-
That extends out into
Right.
Marshall Park, but then you see it in the sidewalks picked up again. Treating it as such, then those dollars should be, going there. We, had a conversation with, Will
Or with Keith.
Williams,
Yeah.
Will Williams, and I was surprised, but he was just a downer on street trees, and then we realized, oh, it doesn't count toward he's having to obviously work with Chester County and the EPA,
Right,
and you don't get the points for the street trees. And so I think we have to be really creative about, I'm just thinking, we need street trees, and they actually do a whole lot for stormwater management.
I know,
But in his book, they don't
I know,
because of the whole point system.
I know.
And so we just don't want to be dictated by a point system that doesn't make sense for our town. So we all,
And we just.
it's gonna be really hard for him to let dollars go to street trees when that
We
doesn't
just
count.
sent the 6 letters of support to Keith for Parks and Rec, for grants. And I'm wondering if, whoever's writing or chasing those grants, if, is there something for street trees? Is there one that,
And redesignating our areas as part, like extending
Right.
this.
Right.
How would we further that conversation?
But I think, I mean, the way we've been looking at it is when you're planting trees, it comes from the tree expense budget. That's an accounting issue. It's not really any other issue than that. So, when Borough Council passes their budget, there's a line item that says you have X number of dollars for tree expense, which includes planting trees, pruning trees, removing trees, bunch of stuff.
Right, but we're trying to grow that, and if we can get grant dollars to
Right.
filter into there, because
Yeah.
you're calling the sidewalks and street trees,
Yeah,
as they should be called, part of our park network,
Right.
and that'd be one way. And I guess my point was, Will was not a huge fan of this policy paper I'm gonna send you. I think
well,
a big reason why he wasn't a fan of it is because if there are dollars to be spent, they need to be spent toward points. Totally understand the point he's making, because he has to have these credits that offset the EPA and whatever else.
so how long ago did he tell you that? Recently?
And it wasn't that clear. I just want to send you this policy
Right, okay.
paper, and I just want you to, with clear eyes about, like, this isn't gonna help our point situation with the EPA, but I think it will help the town.
But I also think Will might have softened his position. He now is responsible for trees.
Okay.
So that when Don Edwards left Public Works, he took trees over.
oh, nice.
Yeah,
Will also made a comment that some of that point system might be changing. I don't know when,
yeah, I don't
but
really understand.
yeah, he just said that.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I mean, something.
The requirement from the Saldo Appendix A, just so circling back so you know where it is. And it says, street trees that are planted in the town center with a brick or concrete sidewalk shall utilize geoengineered tree well systems such as SOFA Cell System 2X or an approved equivalent. So
Okay,
maybe
get you
structural
thought.
soil
Yeah, maybe it
I
is.
think
Yeah.
it is, it's very similar, because it actually
Yeah.
has that.
Yeah.
acceptable under it.
Provides the voids in the year.
Right, right.
Okay, and then, I guess that was part of that conversation. We do next month have another development fund.
Another. Right. I sent you that, yeah.
Yeah, appreciate
Yeah.
that. But just to stick to 410 South High Street, we did request turning radiuses, height calculations, and renderings. We requested as well as the county, so that should double down there. So I'm hoping to get our consultants' response letters as well as the applicant's information a little earlier than Friday afternoon of the Monday before, but we'll just keep asking for that.
So 410's on your agenda for June as well?
Yes. And right now, they should be back in front of us.
Okay.
They owe us information. In theory, the clock starts the first time they're in front of us. They wait 90 days.
Right, right.
Darryl,
Parking,
parking, I'm sorry.
yeah, 410 South High Street. I had the
410 South High Street, okay.
I had the idea that if you had 10 units, you needed 4 visitor parking spaces. Am I wrong on that? They have no visitor parking spaces on site. I don't see how that plan can pass. Thank you.
Thanks, Darryl.
It would have to be like a nuance of, like, if it's an HOA, I don't think the parking details that. I mean, there's a unit count, right? So every unit has to have 2 right now for that plan.
Well, I was trying to understand 2 different pieces there relative to Darryl. There was a new ordinance written that new use, all right? So that kind of, there was the idea of open space, and whether that is or isn't like rec space, because there was conversations about it. They were providing some on the corner and some in a courtyard. All right, so, which provides, rec space, but certainly, how much of it is sort of like the parking, there's 4 or 5 parking spaces on Dean, that's the only parking even on the street that's immediately adjacent to it.
Then you need a permit to park there, which you couldn't get.
Well, that's for multifamily apartment units. These will be for sale owner occupied. So in theory, everybody that owns a home in here still qualifies for a permit.
I thought you had to, actually, your unit had the front on Dean Street to get a permit.
These will, right, you're gonna have
I'm
it, so,
gonna
just because there's a handful, right, because they're gonna be townhouses.
No, I know, but
No.
not all 41 of them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
We really, we changed things so that the apartment buildings could not get parking permits. This is questionable,
Yeah, I don't-
because
I
it's
don't-
not
yeah.
apartments, and he's not calling the 2-level things, like he's saying those are,
Well, they're 2 family attached.
right, which is just like a twin,
but
in theory.
They're stacked. Exactly.
They just happen to be on top of each other, so I don't know if he's gonna squeak around that, we have to,
Well, each
Clarify that.
unit, so there's 4 parking spaces
Right.
underneath that building.
no, the parking committee very intentionally said, nobody from these new buildings, thinking they were all apartment buildings, is going to be allowed to get a permit to park on the street. And that also would mean no guest permits.
well,
But because these are no longer apartment buildings, I don't know if what we wrote covers,
It does not, that refers to it as multifamily. These are single family.
Right.
homes.
I know single family homes that are in Mechanics Alley. And they can't get a parking permit because they don't front on Matlack.
oh, because they don't front, right? So that's
makes sense.
the,
Right, but isn't the same situation here?
Well, I was just saying, like, some of these units do,
yeah,
But not all.
that's right.
There's 12 units interior that don't, they face a quarter. But
Well, some face high.
yeah, the ones that face high wouldn't work.
There's no parking there.
There's no permit.
I'm just thinking your address, like, there are 7 of those units that have the address for Dean. There are
Right, but-
however many that have high, there are another 7 that are on Price. And I would assume that those 7 that have that address.
I'm sorry, I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah,
But there's parking, I'm not sure what the borough does if they have long-term leases or something, like in the Bicentennial, which is right up the street.
Yeah.
Bicentennial. Are there spaces available for longer-term rental, right? For residents they could rent a space in the Bicentennial garage.
Yeah. And, they could rent spaces in the garages. Their guests can park in lot 5 or, there's
And
street
the-
parking across
And the
the street.
permits are for, like, if you're in permit B, you're in that, anywhere in B, you can park without.
Right.
So if you run up to the library and with your car, and it still counts in that area, you're okay leaving your car on the street for 15 minutes.
Right, but nobody on High Street or the interior is gonna be allowed to get a parking permit. So they won't have that flexibility.
And this is for guests, so,
No,
No.
no,
no, but I'm saying, we're only worried about parking for guests, really, because they all have.
because they all have their own.
So we just have to keep the context in mind here. I know parking's always gonna be a concern,
Right,
100%. This is way better than apartment,
right.
but it's not, whatever you put on there, parking will be at a premium. So I think we just all have to keep it. There's not gonna be.
It is funny.
And there, yeah, there is. Yeah. That's right.
The
Yeah,
Emerald,
there are options. for you.
and that's literally way cheaper if you buy a 30.
It's not that hard.
No, it's right down, right down, it's one block.
It is very funny though, that there are gonna be people who I think are gonna be allowed to get permits, and there are people who are not gonna be allowed to get
Well,
permits.
those Dean Street townhomes they're gonna be way more expensive than every other one. Because you can get a parking permit, you're on Dean Street and not on higher price. I mean, those are gonna be the
Yeah,
premium homes in my opinion, but I mean, I don't know. Supply- That's right.
Yeah.
It's really work.
Good point.
next?
Yes. That's great. So did anybody have any other comments regarding that? There was that, I mean, certainly the trash came up. Most of the comments revolved around basically vehicular circulation in the adjacent neighborhoods. That was an issue prior to this development, and I'm not sure what kind of impact this one has, access to both Price and Dean. So relative speaking, I don't think having access that was brought up on High
Yes.
helps it. I think that actually makes the intersection at Dean much more dangerous.
Yes.
Another intersection that close. So, I mean, I think this is a third of the population. Instead of 128 units, we're talking about 42. And I do think that I agree with Matt that parking is always going to be an issue. I do believe that there are options available because the borough owns Bicentennial. That is on our list for other things, was getting some structured parking garages.
Yes,
Right.
let's do that.
Because there are cities like Lancaster that have no parking requirements because they have a lot of structured parking garages.
Right.
And then that allows them to fill those up with residents that pay money to, there's a lot of money in parking,
Right.
so. But,
So can I just bring up one thing?
sure can.
So, I have now heard at least 4 different interpretations of when the clock started to run, when it runs out, when borough council consider it. And all that really matters is what the applicant allows. It looks like we're in the extension. So if we could put in our discussions with them the need to clarify with them exactly when we need to vote on this. And if that exceeds any of these 4 other estimates, then we should get it right. And then the matter goes away, but the disaster would be if you can construct a scenario with a reasonably good attorney that this thing is in danger of being proposed. And I know it's only preliminary, but I just think it's such a, it's a horrible, just little house.
And that's what I was checking to see if they had actually had that on the planning commission page, because there is a schedule still there. I don't forget where it was. Here it is. We didn't add that 2 o'clock in for subdivisions and land developments. So that should have 410 South Street, Plan 3 with townhouses, and it should have the start date. But I'm sure it really is.
If we blow it,
Well, we're not gonna, well, it starts with the first meeting comes. Doesn't matter what happens anywhere else. As soon as the first meeting in front of the planning commission, that starts the 90 days.
that would be your
So we
interpretation.
basically, well, that's what it is.
I get it.
But I think-
And last week,
Sure, I think,
we heard something completely different
I think he made a mistake.
from the employee. So I'm just saying.
I asked for clarification on that in an email because he had made note of it and that's not correct. It was not correct. So I will make sure it's clarified now, because I'm 100% with you. But we do have 90 here. And then we can always ask the applicant to ask for an extension if we're not comfortable, but they have to ask for it. We have to agree.
Oh, we can ask them to ask. But yes, you're right.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Yeah, we're not the one. So I don't know if you know, we can't give the extension. They have to.
Yeah.
I would like to get Aaron's, is he the one who accepts this package as complete?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, so it is very much incomplete according to our ordinance. So, and in the past, that didn't matter, obviously. But the lack of height, the lack of so many things that we've asked for that are required, Therefore, it should not be accepted as complete, and so our clock shouldn't have even started in my mind. So that's why I would like to get, Sharon's not here, but I would like to get clarity on if he formally accepted this. Maybe, I don't know if that's true or not, so that's what I would like to get, and how he interprets that.
Well, I agree with you, which is why I sent that email.
Yeah, no, I know, I understand. Because I think that will
So
help clarify.
I've got your question, I got Matt's question, I think they're both valid, solid. Both the same guy, so. Okay. All right, any general comments prior to? All right, my only last one is we're gonna see 615, 617. So take a look at that package. It's generally, again, they were in here for that sketch plan. It's worthwhile to go. This is the Walnut. Yeah, 615, 617 South Walnut, which is Ted and
Bill and Ted.
Is it Bill and Ted?
I don't know.
Ted and Rich.
I hope it is.
Ted and Rich.
Ted and Rich. I knew Ted, I know that. So, they had the, existing, I was a little confused when I read in the application because they kept the number of parcels was wrong. Because there's really two presently, and really they should be, kind of reversing it into one property and turning it into HOA.
That is it.
That's what they said, but that's not what the form says.
Oh, I
So if you look at the application, it still identifies 5 parcels, which is not correct. So there was something on the paper. Works out of things.
That's such a small area. I they're gonna fit 5 units there.
Oh,
It's actually pretty big.
Is it really?
Yeah, yeah. It actually fits nice. They're, I'm gonna call them right-sized units, Chip. They're nicely sized. I think that should allow them to be, more affordable than most units. And I think that's the goal. I think that's their goal, is to come in.
The 2 houses are student rentals, aren't they? Existing houses?
They're all gonna be owner,
He's talking about the existing.
correct.
Yeah.
And what they are presently.
Interesting.
I mean, that's Party City there.
I think when they were in for their skip plan, now they'll be in for the first time for a formal submission next month, we can clarify. When they were in for the sketch plan, the goal, the intent was that they would be owner occupied for sale units.
Right.
So that's what the stated intent was.
They should sell the permits to the university.
Right. Well, I was wondering even with 410 South High Street, because it's an HOA, whether the developer can add something in the homeowners association that restricts any students, like turning them into a student rental, just to protect all.
We have a framework to turn anything into a student rental? Yeah.
Well, you can rent a home. Well, you can rent a home. If for a student there, but it used to be, they put a cap on the student rentals.
Right.
But you can still rent a house, but that doesn't mean people aren't getting around it. There's.
Sure, but so you add like a secondary thing on top of that. I mean,
Well, I'm saying I'm not talking about zoning or something. I'm talking about a homeowners association, protect homeowner from homeowner. In a sense of you spent that dollar, you're living in just say you're in one of the 2 family attached and you're on that first floor. And then upstairs, if somebody else buys it as an investment property and moves just one person in, but somehow 8 people are in there, all right? So something to give the other homeowners some grounds to protect their townhomes and neighbors. But I don't know what's going on in that neighborhood back there. Like I've never surveyed or gone down there. We've seen some of the homeowners that live along those alleys and they've showed up and they have a big interest in the property. So in the same way, I'm assuming whoever buys and moves in here and spends that money will also. But I don't know if I don't know what we can or can't request of them. But anyway, I think that's it. And if that's it, we'll adjourn the meeting and see you next month.
Thank you.
Chip, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Appreciate your time. And the work you did with, I just want to get you more money and more trees.
That'd be nice.
One version. Didn't work, they proved to.
Well, what, I'm sorry. What's the point you're trying to make that?